Howdy, folks. Today I'm giving a quick, unscripted review over Fantastic Four First Steps. For this review, I'll try to be as spoiler-free as possible, but there's always a chance that something leaks through. I'll also be using a single image for the backdrop of this video, as YouTube doesn't seem to like it whenever I use trailer footage. So basically, just treat this like a mini podcast if you want. Without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? To start, I want to discuss the story a little bit. Not enough to give away any huge spoilers, but just enough to set the dressing for the film. Basically, the film starts 4 years after the Fantastic Four have already become the Fantastic Four. I already kind of like this because it skips through a whole bunch of boring exposition stuff where you have to go through like 30 minutes of establishing who all the characters are and how they got their powers. Something similar was done in the recent Superman film, and I hope that this sort of continues for superheroes who have already gotten films before in the past, but are getting reboots now. Because honestly, I think we all agree, it's kind of nice just to trim some of that fat off and get right into who the characters are and what they want. Basically, after that, we're introduced to the Silver Surfer. She causes some shenanigans, and then we are kind of given our overarching story, which is the arrival of Galactus is looming over the Earth, and the Fantastic Four need to figure out what they're going to do in order to stop him from destroying everything. So for my overall evaluation of the story, I would say that it is serviceable. Now, it would have been nice if we maybe had Doctor Doom instead of Galactus, because Galactus seems like such a big deal for only the first film that the Fantastic Four have shown up in. But they do well enough to balance out that sort of cosmic scale sort of entity in it that I'm not bothered too much that basically Galactus is only here for a single film. So far, I might add. I think the biggest strength of this story is the fact that it is disconnected from the main MCU, meaning that they are given free rein just to explore these characters without worrying about how this ties into that, or teasing too much about some other big bad coming down the line that inevitably probably gets fired due to the fact that they're like a sex pest or something. I would honestly say that the story itself is kind of weak, not in the sense that it was bad, mind you, but I feel like the characters themselves take more of a front-facing position instead of the story itself, if that makes any sense. What I'm trying to say is, the characters are more intriguing than the overall sum of the story's parts. Overall, the story itself felt very safe. You knew everyone was going to be okay in the end because they kind of announced that everyone was already going to show up in Avengers Doomsday. So that kind of just tells us, hey, this is more of an introduction to these characters, and if you want anything more meaty with them, you're probably going to have to wait until Doomsday comes out. Which I'm sure that'll be fun. Next up, I want to talk about the characters a little bit. I think the Fantastic Four are probably my favorite ensemble group that they've had in the MCU in a long while. Marvel's first family are alive and well in this new film, and I gotta say, it was really nice to see everyone again after, man, how long's it been since the Fox films? It's been a really long freaking time, and things have certainly improved in terms of CGI, especially looking at the Thing and how Johnny Storm sort of lights on fire. Speaking of which, in terms of characters who I really liked in this film, I would say that Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards was probably one of my favorite performances in an MCU film since probably Endgame. Pedro does a fantastic job at portraying this highly intelligent but socially awkward person. You can just tell that he's always thinking of some sort of plan or strategy to get around the current threat of Galactus, and his mind keeps going back to one singular point, which causes a lot of tension in the film. It's great to sort of see that while Reed is a hero, there's also some grayness to him that could leak out at any moment. You know, sort of doing whatever it takes for the good of all mankind sort of thing. Now, as for my second favorite character of the film, I gotta go with my main man, Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. I can't remember what his actor's name is that goes for the rest of the Fantastic Four, unfortunately. But the Thing was, I think, excellent. Probably the best portrayal of the character we've had yet, or ever. Just depends on how, the world sort of goes in the next few years. I was going to save this for the CGI section of the review, but I'll just say it now and probably wrap back around to it later as well. But the Thing's CGI in this film is done very, very well. And I'm very glad that Marvel took some time and actually developed upon it. Now, of course, you can obviously tell that he's still a CGI man, but the mannerisms of the Thing's actor still bleed through with this excellent facial recognition or whatever they've done with the character's face. The personality just bleeds through, which I'm very appreciative of, because big bruiser types are among my favorites in films. Although, spoilers for another section, the Thing doesn't get to do too much clobbering in this movie, so again, hopefully Doomsday will incorporate that a bit more. Next, we have Sue Storm as my third favorite of the Fantastic Four. Again, just because you're third favorite, or even fourth favorite, doesn't mean you did a bad job. I really enjoyed all members of the Fantastic Four. I just felt like Sue Storm was maybe third best just because at times it doesn't feel like she was given much to do besides being sort of foil for Reed Richards, if that makes any sense. The two obviously have a lot of arguments throughout the film, and usually I would say that she's in the right. But I would have liked to see her take even more charge at times, as I know like Reed is, sort of the, de facto leader, or maybe unofficial leader of the Fantastic Four. But as you watch the film, you kind of realize Susan's really the one with the most developed power set, and I would have liked to see her utilize it even more in the film. It isn't until, the very end that we really see what all she can do. Similar to The Thing. Finally, number 4 is Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. And I gotta say, he had a lot of fun little quippy moments. He was a bit of a goofball, but he also knew how to take charge at times and sort of try to establish himself as a team player. But at the same time, he kind of just flew around a lot. I don't know, I was maybe expecting him to shoot more fire or throw fireballs or do some creative things with fire. Apparently, and I don't know if the character could always do this, I'm not a huge comic book expert, and it's been a long time since I've seen the old Fantastic Four films, but I didn't know that he could absorb fire. I really would have liked to see that utilized a bit more in the film, because that is a really interesting power to have that's just barely elaborated upon. As for the antagonists of the film, as we're moving on from the Fantastic Four, I think the Silver Surfer herself was done very well. She's given a whole character arc, she's given a personality, besides just being a herald. But in contrast, we're not really given much to go on when it comes to Galactus, which both works for the film and it kind of works a little bit against it. I think for one thing, not knowing a lot about Galactus kind of makes him a bit scarier. He's basically this giant unstoppable being that our characters need to think around. He's more of a force of nature than he is actually a character. But at the same time, they also give him a few little moments where he shows more of a personality, and I think that was a bit of a mistake because that made me want more from him. It made me see him as, being a character who's more than just hungry. There's something more going on there. And that wasn't elaborated upon too much as well. Which, again, I'm sure we'll probably end up seeing Galactus again at some point because, hey, them CGI models are expensive, so you gotta get some reuse out of them. But yeah, that's the overall cast for the film. I think they all did really good. Although that could just be my blind optimism getting in the way. I don't usually like to hate on things that I paid money to see, unless they're really bad. Up next, and this section's really short, It's the action. For this film, there's surprisingly not a lot of action, which you think, hey, it's a Marvel movie, there needs to be a bunch of CGI explosions and monsters everywhere, and you kind of get a little bit of that in the very beginning in a sizzle reel that sort of details the backstory of the Fantastic Four. But after that, it's a long time before anything sort of action related really happens. And in fact, I would say that you don't really get anything until towards the very end involving Galactus himself as sort of the big CGI monster fight. And even then, effects like Johnny's fire or the Thing himself are used very sparingly in these action sequences. And in fact, I might as well just go on to the CGI now and say that overall it was all very decent. I personally think one of the funniest things is they do everything in their power to give Reed Richards sleeves. That way, when he does his stretchy abilities, it doesn't look gross and like uncanny with human flesh. I thought that was pretty funny. I definitely think it looks better than a lot of recent MCU films, like take for example Love and Thunder's CGI. Ugh. This film definitely had a lot of time in the oven, at least when compared to other Marvel movies, I'm pretty sure. So overall, I was pleased with the CGI. Again, it's not like James Cameron's Avatar levels of quality, but what you get will definitely work for the type of film that it is. Which brings me to the next point, the production design. As you can tell, the film is a 1960s style retro-futuristic utopia sort of New York, and unfortunately, I feel like that wasn't used as much as it could have been. Like, you see some like flying cars and fancy monorails everywhere in New York, and some of the equipment in the Fantastic Four's lab has like tape decks in it. But I would have actually liked to see analog technology utilized a bit more in the film. Because at the end of the day, they do end up having fancy hollow screens and projectors, and I don't know. I just really wish they would have utilized the setting a bit more in order to make it really stand out from the other Marvel films, besides just set dressing. Finally, we have, for this film, the music. Overall, I thought the soundtrack was okay. Nothing that really moved me to tears like something in James Gunn's Superman did. Instead, it was just sort of your usual Marvel fare with bombastic orchestral tones. There's a little bit of like a do, like Fantastic Four theme worked in there with some choir arrangements, which was very nice, but again, underutilized like a lot of other things in the film. But I will say that the music itself was decent. Again, nothing too groundbreaking, but for the production of this film, it works for what it is. I'm kind of hoping that hopefully Doomsday will provide something with a bit more meat on the table. I mean, heck, if they could get MF Doom into Doomsday somehow, that would probably put a lot of butts into theater seats. So, what are you waiting for, Marvel? Give us a little bit of Doomalay. Rest in peace. So, overall, would I recommend the Fantastic Four First Steps? And honestly, when compared to a lot of Marvel films, it's probably up there as being one of the better ones, at least recently. So, yes, I would recommend it. Just know to keep your expectations a bit lowered. I mean, again, we live in a world where James Gunn's Superman now exists, and that really set the bar up high for superhero films. This new Fantastic Four is a fun little romp that is standalone for the most part until you get to an after credits scene. So I would say if you haven't seen a Marvel movie in a long while, and you sort of want to get a little bit of the popcorn flick action in, then this will be a good sort of place to jump in. Is it the best film of the summer? No. That goes to Jurassic World Rebirth, just kidding, it's Superman. But it surprisingly has more heart than I was expecting. So if you want to reward Marvel a little bit as a treat, I say go see it. Or just wait until it comes to streaming on Disney Plus, like it eventually will. And, well, there's always another alternative, but I'm not going to say it here. Just yo ho ho. Took a bite of gum gum. But yeah, that's my sort of rambly thoughts and review of Fantastic Four First Steps. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, but you don't have to if you don't want to, but doing so does help me out a lot. So feel free to let me know down below. Have you seen the film? Have you not seen the film? What did you think of it? Are you going to see it now that you've listened to this review? Or do you feel like it's something that you'd rather just miss out on? Please let me know. I really do want to know a bit more about what people think. With all that said, I hope you all have a wonderful day.